I recently got my hands on some guava fruit, which isn't a fruit that's real common in our area because I'm in the Pacific Northwest. But I've been having some fun with it and making some jam. So that's what I wanted to show you how to do today. Now the way I started that is I peeled all of my guava, I cut off the ends, I cut them in half, and then I pulled out the pulp. Now I saved this pulp because I use it to make a syrup with later. I really liked using the melon baller to get the seeds out. It was almost the perfect size and it just did such a good job. The jam is just made out of the sides of the fruit, which isn't very big. I had some pretty small guava, so I did 23 different guava, and the fruit itself is about 3 cups worth. Guava fruit is pretty dry, so I'll add my 1/4 a cup of lemon juice. Now I'll take my puree, it already smells really good, and I'll put it into my pan. Once blended up, the guava makes about 1 cup worth of puree, and then of course there's the 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice that's in it as well. And then I'll add 2 tablespoons of pectin. This is a pretty small batch, but it's still kind of fun. And then I'll add 1/2 teaspoon of butter. And I'll bring this to the stove and I'll bring it to a boil. It won't take very long with being such a small amount. I do have my 2 cups of sugar that have been pre-measured already. So the guava jam, since it's such a small amount, it doesn't actually come to a boil per se, but I kind of pile everything up in the center. And once it starts to give me bubbles, that's when I'll add my sugar. So now I'll add my 2 cups of sugar, and this will melt relatively quickly because it is such a small amount. And then it will be more liquid and more like you would usually anticipate with a jam. And then I'll bring that back to a boil. Now that it's come to a boil, I'll set the timer for 1 minute. And I'll continue to stir the whole time just to be sure that it doesn't burn. Next, I'll add 1/8 of a teaspoon of vanilla. If I was to add this in while it was cooking, it would just burn off the flavor, so it really is best to put it in after it's done. And then I just mix it in well, and then I'm ready to jar my jam. And I'll fill my 1/2 pint jars up to 1/4 of an inch of headspace, which is the space from the top of the food to the top of the jar. Since it's such a small amount, I'll just go right to using the spatula to fill my jars. Otherwise, I usually use a ladle. And it should give me at least 2 jars here. It does, with just a tiny bit left over for a taste tester, so that's good. I'll then use a clean, damp cloth to wipe off the edge of my jars. This just makes it so if any of the jam got on the edge, that it won't interfere with the seal. And then I'll place my lids and rings on until they're fingertip tight. And I'll process these in the boiling water bath for 10 minutes. If at sea level, I'm at 1,200 feet, so I'll go for 15, but I won't start my timer until after it begins a rapid boil. Now that the timer's gone off, I'll turn off the heat, remove the lid, and let it sit for 5 minutes. I'll then remove the jars from the canner and place them on a heat-resistant surface about 1 to 2 inches apart so they can cool quickly. And then I'll let them sit for about 24 hours to make sure they get a good seal. After that point, I'll remove the ring and wash them with hot soapy water and then store them in a cool, dry, dark location and use them in the next 1 to 3 years. I can tell that they've had a good seal if the button that's in the center of the lid has pressed down. If it hasn't, then I put them in the refrigerator and I use them right away. So time for the taste tester. So nice and firm. And that guava taste is just over the top. It's so strong. I really like it. It is just a little bit granular, kind of like a pear jam would be. A super fun tropical jam to have on any number of things that you would eat jam with.